Hi, I'm Amy Medford. Welcome to Art Forms. Today's show is in memory of a wonderful artist, Stefan Martin. We are going to talk to people who knew him well as an artist, a person, and a teacher. Tony, how was it for you and Stefan growing up together as artists?
It was lively. My father was an exuberant kind of guy. He liked to dance as well as draw. My mother at the time was, in our earliest time, was making a mural in the WPA in Tennessee. I just discovered this recently, that it was a finished mural. It's still there, so I'm going to go see it.
Wonderful.
Anyway, so both of them, David and Thelma, were artists, and particularly I remember the time of our New York apartment, and Stefan and I played on the sidewalks continuously, across from the Methodist Church on 4th Street. And my mother took a lot of pictures of us because she was really changing into a photographer at that time in the early 40s. Mm-hmm. So you asked that question and I immediately think of our life together, the four of us, as living in a world where people were making things,
right,
and creating things.
Right, a family of artists.
Right, and then soon after that we moved to Roosevelt. I was 7, Stefan was 8 or 6 or 7, and my father was doing drawings basically of jazz musicians, and Mary Lou Williams was a friend. He was doing drawings of Lester Young and Dizzy Gillespie, and Thelma was photographing people like Leadbelly and Woody Guthrie, and Stefan and I were making model airplanes and kites. And David and Thelma both were extremely nurturing for both Stefan and myself. They gave us tools for Christmas.
Did
they? It was what we loved most, to have something we could put together, like erector sets, mm-hmm. Or drills and screwdrivers and just nuts and bolts.
So you're
and pieces of wood.
Creating and building from an early age.
Yeah, so I really have to hand it to David and Thelma for having that approach to our young life, and so Stefan and I were constantly making things. Stefan in particular loved to make model airplanes and to put tiny pieces of wood together and shape them. And I think it's important because later on those same instincts and that same incredible focus of putting little things together, I think translated into his wood engraving, his methods of wood engraving, which were very fine, very precise, and dealing with the material of wood, very much so, and the tools that would enable him to shape wood. So it really has its roots back then, and those times were wonderful. And then it broke down a bit, I think, in the teenage times.
The tough adolescent years.
Yeah, well, we tended to go off separately more. David and Thelma, mm-hmm. and Stefan and myself, in our separate ways. David was spending a lot of time doing new kinds of work, going in and out of New York. Stefan and I were pretty much involved with music, and that's an important point I'd like to make, that I think both of us tended to shy away from the visual arts mm-hmm. as children, but we weren't shying away from being creative in any way. So whatever way there was to be creative, we jumped at it. But we kind of shied away from the drawing and the painting. I think because David was doing it all the time, and we didn't want to compete with him, I guess. So, so later on, there was a transition. I became very involved with music. I became a classical guitar player and a bass jazz player. Stefan became a clarinet player and a sax player. And we were in the high school band. We formed a band, and then I became involved in a band at Princeton, and Stefan was playing basically anything that was wind or mouth. That meant harmonicas, clarinets, saxophones, and I was strings always. So. But there we were, as you know, to round it out, a kind of polysensory art family at that point, and going off in our separate directions. Only after the family kind of broke up, after graduating high school, did I become a painter, for instance. And Stefan had a kind of a direct line of working visually because he went to the Chicago Art Institute, which was a kind of a natural, it seemed like a good thing for him to do, so he went there and got immediately involved in painting and drawing. And I went to Europe with a jazz band and then went to the University of Michigan, but I ended up back in Chicago, well, not back, but in Chicago as well. So it was kind of, again, a family thing. David and Thelma both went to the Chicago Art Institute.
Family tradition.
Yeah. So that's a loop of our young life, I guess.
In what you've been telling me about his beginnings, how do you see your brother as an artist? When you think back about his beginnings at the Art Institute in Chicago and his development? Well, there's a lot of things I could say about that. But I had thought to talk about a couple of things. Right. First of all, in Chicago, Stefan was a very robust painter when he first got there. And he was kind of the shining light of their class at the Art Institute. He got into dealing with large canvases with very broad strokes. Mm-hmm. And I remember the apartment there in Chicago near Blue Island Avenue. There was already 2 children, and Stefan, there was a painting on the wall that was very broadly stroked, orangish pink and bluish black line and some darker areas and kind of a neutral field that was very abstract and felt like someplace between a figure and a landscape, which is probably a good way to describe his early work. It looked a little bit like early de Kooning. Okay. And he was a little bit influenced by his teacher at the Art Institute, whose name I don't want to pronounce wrong, and I don't really know it, so I'm not going to say it. He was a German-American. He came to America during the war, I think, and he brought with him a little bit of the Bauhaus feel, but then I think he was affected by the New York School of Painting and by de Kooning and Klein and so. So Stefan's early paintings were very bold, very explorative, and somewhere between abstraction and observation of basically figure and landscape, I think. So that was a good period for Stefan, and the other students liked his work, you know. My paintings were entirely different. I was working much more like Soutine or some figurative expressionist, you know. But Stefan was more in tune with what was happening in New York at the time, and his springboard then in painting would be directly related to the New York school, partly through this teacher. Well, it's the same time that he had to get work to pay for 2 new children and the Art Institute and the art supplies, so he got a job as a wood engraver. Well, a year later, he was wood engraving every day after school. He would go to the Sanders Wood Engraving in Chicago, and he was learning everything about the medium, absolutely everything, in the best way as an apprentice. Well, at that time, he started doing his own wood engravings as well. But I think what I'm leading up to is that the wood engraving took him over very much. And when he then moved back to New Jersey in about 60, he got a job at the World's Fair being a demonstrator, an artist demonstrator. And he was demonstrating wood engraving. Oh, how wonderful. So he was getting jobs, commissions for images like flowers and trees and people and things like that to do for people, and he would do them at the fair. Wow. He would make the drawing at home because he said he couldn't do the drawings in front of people, but he could do the engravings in front of people. It was also a time when he said something about how he felt that the hand becomes almost the mind when he was doing the wood engraving. What a wonderful quote.
Yeah, it's a statement that I think reveals that somehow the wood engraving caught him at his center, and that he truly loved it. He could focus there. He worked on a little round stand that the wood engraver uses. It's a very fine medium using very hard wood, Turkish boxwood or hard maple, and metal engraving tools that you hold somewhat like this, and you're working with very tiny textural methods of making dark and light. So I'll say a little bit more about that, I think, in a minute. But
okay.
Stefan's mature work, I believe, in the 60s became a combination of things, but the wood engraving was I think, his primary medium in certain periods of time. In the first period, I think there was some good, strong early painting, and then in the 60s and through the 70s, he developed, well, he just put his heart into some wonderful wood engraving, including some larger pieces, and I think he really fell in love with it at that point as his own expressive method.
I think Stefan Martin was an interesting person. Certainly the object that we have over here is an illustration of his almost virtuoso performance when it comes to wood engraving, woodcuts. I think that he was a very talented person, as well as a craftsman I can't even think of anybody living today who would be as comparable to his abilities. Stefan used to do some paintings, but even then I think it was a combination of both painting and engraving. He used to use some huge masonite sheets and then engraved onto the masonite as well as colored them. So at the same time, while he was painting, he also used the line as an essential element in his work. And of course, wood engraving, woodcuts as a graphic arts. But that's what he was doing. Well, he was an extremely friendly and open person. I think that several times we have met since he moved to Roosevelt. We were very joyful times, and he was it's not the right word to use happy-go-lucky, but he was a very, very gracious person. He was a very generous person, and I think that's one of the most important aspects of a personal relationship with him. Okay. The museum is fortunate to have, of course, several pieces in the collection. One of them is, of course, here, which is a wood engraving. There's another one, of course, of Ben Shahn, who also lived in Roosevelt, and in some projects they have collaborated. Back in I think it was in 1968 when Ben Shahn designed that rather famous image of Martin Luther King, which was an ink drawing, and he asked Stefan Martin to engrave it. And of course, this is the image that certainly the best known. We have also some of these large paintings, engravings that he was so well known for.
Here to give us a demonstration of wood engraving is printmaker Patrick Gallagher from the Printmaking Council of New Jersey.
Hi.
Hi.
This is quite a rare honor to be talking about Stefan's technique.
He had, I understand, a very unusual technique.
Now, one of the things that Stefan did, well, in all wood graving, is that they carve on the end grain of the wood as opposed to the long surface. And you can see here on this block how it's laminated together in little pieces. This is probably a piece of apple wood or cherry wood or something. Very, very dense wood. My demonstration, I have a piece of poplar. It's not as fancy. And then they dig out the surface. It can be very fine, and they roll ink on the surface. Some techniques, the ink goes in the grooves. Stefan's technique was on the surface.
Can I step back just a little bit about the woods? You were talking about working on an end grain, and you were talking about fruit wood. Is the fruit wood a very dense wood?
Some of them. The cherry woods and apple woods are very, very dense.
As opposed to the poplar, which is
it's a little more open grain. You can actually see the difference in the grain.
And what would be the advantage, of working with one in his style, for example?
Well, his technique is very delicate.
Okay.
You can see the lines are so thin that you can hardly see them.
Right. There's that real detail effect, and you can achieve that.
A great example to show engraving technique is the money, the U.S. currency. That's all engraved, and it's really fine and delicate.
Is that the same process as Stefan Martin's process?
A little bit. The money is inked Italio style, where the ink goes in the grooves, where Stefan was inking relief style on the surface.
Okay. Can you explain a little bit what the difference between those two methods would be?
One you actually can print by hand. Like when you ink on the surface, you can just lay the paper on and you can just rub the back with a burin or your fingers or a press. Where the other technique, you need to soak the paper in water and you need to have presses and it crushes in. And it's kind of a little more involved.
Like a little relief almost.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And some, the techniques that Stefan was using, these are, like I said, this is the artist tool, the actual artist tools.
Yeah, this is actually, right, one of Stefan's actual pieces and the tools that he used.
His fine techniques were done, you get in here and you push them along. Different effects can be made. There's all kinds of different tools. This is a flat gouge kind of tool.
Can you show us a little bit more about, the tips of the tools and the differences?
Can we see that? Yeah. See, this one's very smooth, where this one here, this one has little grooves in it. I don't know if you can see them, but they make a different technique. They make these lines.
More of a textured surface.
Yeah. And they work a number of different ways. It all depends on the artist's technique. Now you can push away, which is the recommended safety high school method of showing printmaking.
Which we are advocating here.
You push away from yourself, so of course you don't draw any blood.
Right,
Got to make sure your hands are away. These tools are very sharp. Sometimes you can make different techniques, and the tools fit into your palm. And you can make curves and you can go around. You have to make sure that your hands aren't in the way in case they do slip.
Is that why the tool has sort of an angle to it?
Yes,
so that it fits naturally into the palm?
It fits naturally into the palm of your hand.
Right, I guess when you're an experienced printmaker or experienced wood engraver, like you said, you can manipulate the tool in all different directions.
All different directions. Beginners, though, I recommend going out that way. There are so many different techniques, and there are probably hundreds of these tools. That have all kinds of different feels and swirls and widths. And
are there different tools for different woods, or are all the...
Not so much, no. There are wood engravers, though, and there are metal engravers.
Okay. And they would use different types of tools?
There are different kinds of steels, maybe, different... they'll just cut metal. I mean, they have to be sharpened a little differently. Where the wooden tools... You have a little bit of leeway because the wood does give a little. It's a very nice. This tool here, which is making these thin little lines all together, would be used to do like a shading technique.
Okay.
Very much like a Ben-Day pattern or a tint screen that you would see in in regular printing.
Can you explain a little bit more about what a Ben-Day pattern would be?
Well, to make a gray, they have to use like a lot of dots.
Okay.
They can't really print gray. It has to be made up of tiny little dots that print, and so optically you see them as gray, but they're all really itty-bitty little dots. If you look at a photograph in a newspaper, especially one that wasn't printed so well, you can see all the little dots. And basically you're doing the same technique. Now on Stefan's block here, you can see where he has made the little dots.
Oh, yes.
And the lines with actually probably this tool. It looks like it fits right in there.
Oh, how wonderful. Yeah.
Get the little dots over there. And you can, and that makes a gray pattern. See, so what you see as the black here would then print black as a solid color.
So that's something that's a really fascinating part of this. It's a reverse.
It is a reverse.
You have to work, as a printmaker, as a wood engraver. Can you explain a little bit about the process?
Printmaking in general is a reverse process. You're making a negative, like a photographic negative, if you've ever held a photographic negative. And in Stefan's technique, you cut the wood out to let the light in.
Okay.
So everywhere you cut will become white. One of the techniques that they use is they'll put powder on there, and rub it in so you can see the white.
Yeah, I think we actually have some footage of Stefan working where he
Okay.
demonstrates
Well, you
that.
may see him doing
I
that.
just
then.
started this, always the most forward objects first.
Oh, you mean
To-
in space, like the tree?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm outlining
In
it
foreground.
with a fine tool, and I
Oh.
use a lot of talcum powder, so I can see what I'm doing,
Oh,
and then I can sort of see what I have there. And every tool does a different job. You have to know which tool does what. Not too many that can do this. It's like a thing I learned when I was in school. I was an apprentice. Sander Wood Engraving Company in Chicago.
was that a school?
Yeah, well,
Or-
no, the school, I went to the Art Institute of Chicago, but I really learned probably a lot more as an apprentice in a wood engraving shop. As an apprentice. They paid me a lousy $1.50 an hour to learn the trade. And if I mess up, I have a problem because I have to put a dowel in that spot. So I'm very careful not to make a mistake.
What do you mean?
If I go into the trunk of the tree, I'm in trouble. I'm going around the shape.
Oh, and so you fill it in with wood or something?
Yeah,
kind of
and you
thing?
can't do it on wood engraving, though.
That
I have to put
branch dough.
I have to put a dowel in if it's bad. I drill a hole and put a dowel in I don't make a mistake anymore.
No, so you have no, you can't show us any of it.
Yeah, really.
What is this building?
And then, this is the Annenberg Hall at Petty School. I'm doing a series for them. And it's printed normally on a piece of Japanese rice paper or French paper.
You're spreading that out on
Yeah.
top of one of the blocks that you finished
top of-
etching with the tools.
Exactly. Which is multiple hours.
Yeah, that's where the work,
It's roughly an
That's
hour
the-
square inch.
an hour, what?
Hour per square inch. You know, relative, depending. Ink it up, it looks like velvet again. Not gooky, not gooey. Beginners always want to throw a lot of ink on it. And normally I would print on Japanese rice paper, but I have this here now, so we're going to take a print. And I'll show you how I do it. And I back it. I give it a little extra weight on it. Adds a cushion to it. And this is just a regular proof press. Basic proof press. And I go across. And hopefully we get a nice proof. There we go. See. That's Wilson Hall at Petty School. I'm doing a series of 3 for them.
Getting a lot of encouragement, I think, like you said, from the commissions and the ability to use the skills
Right.
so that he could express himself through them.
That's exactly right. He would do small pieces, let's say like this. This is of tadpoles. He did a lot of natural pieces from natural subjects, partly because there were commissions from nature groups, and also books like Elizabeth Coatsworth, I believe, a book of called The Sparrow Bush, where naturally he was doing birds and bushes and trees and flowers. And he was very expert at this. That grew into and joined with, I think, some of the imagery of figure and landscape that he was first involved with. So a piece like this is a kind of, I think, ultimate expression of Stefan's in a good part of his creative life. It's a large wood engraving that is partially figurative.
Yes.
It uses dark and light in a very strong, abstract way. And then there is a kind of a river of texture that runs through it. And this river of texture is a beautiful combination of little leaf-like marks and dashes and curved lines that are just wonderful to take a journey with. It's the way he makes all of the gray values between dark and light. And it's kind of beautiful to think about, because when you're wood engraving, you're taking out wood to make light, and you're leaving, what you leave becomes dark.
So it's a reverse process.
So it's really a reverse process, which is kind of interesting to think about. So therefore, the making of the light configurations, is to make light look a certain way around what becomes dark. And just, I think it was a process that he fell in love with and took him over even more than the painting did.
Stefan's work really reflects this great love of nature. It's so clear in so many of the pieces that he's done.
Yeah, well, Stefan has a powerful love and empathy with nature. He would just stare at a part of a woods or at birds, or for the longest time, in terms of the detail and also the general feeling of them. A piece like his peregrine falcon shows how much his observation would work for him in terms of a large, simple image and very detailed execution of identification of what things looked like. And then he explored, he had fun with it too. I mean, here's a picture of the earth with people and trees just sprouting all from it in every possible way, which showed how exuberant his love was. Another part of it was New Jersey, where he chose to live. Stefan really loved central New Jersey, and it's kind of, we know what it's like. It's pines and it's deciduous trees and sand and flowers and birds and houses like this, you know, like in Allentown.
Yeah.
And somehow Stefan felt an affinity to the environment of central New Jersey, truly loved it, and made hundreds of wood engravings about that environment. Stefan was able to sell a lot of his work. He did very well as an artist.
Yes, he did.
Basically. His work is in homes all over central New Jersey, and I think that says a lot about his finding his place and also finding his audience. So,
Tony, thank you.
yeah, you're welcome.